Wild Karen pushes me into a table saw. This happened 8 months ago. It started as a simple work tiff, but things got really heated really quick. One of my coworkers pushed me, and his mother joined suit. Unfortunately, I had left the table saw on in my workspace, and she deliberately pushed me right into it. She nearly sawed my entire hand in half, but I'm not sure yet if I want to pursue it legally, and I think it might be too late. My friend Kylan and I work in a woodworking company. It's a pretty great job for me, as I love hands-on activity and creating things. Kylan, however, has more of a difficult time with it all, which is completely fine, as I help him with it. His mom and my mom aren't necessarily close, but both support me and him in our work. We're pretty young, so it helps with reassurance. But a few days before this incident, I started to realize that Kylan's mom never really acknowledged my work. Now, that's not really a big deal to me, as I don't require praise, but I do find it a bit weird, as Kai's mom has apparently had a few racial incidents at her own work, and I'm African. I was just assuming it's because she's afraid. I'm a pretty built guy and 6'6". Fast forward to Tuesday, and I'm working on a wooden chair that has taken me a few more attempts than wanted. The table saw I had been using to make clean cuts was pretty rusty from Kai using it constantly. I headed out to the department to get a replacement, and was a bit annoyed with Kai not doing it himself. I came back and said, "Hey man, don't be afraid to change your equipment." And he rolled his eyes and just replied with a K, which just annoyed me even more. I just pushed past it and continued. But minutes later, I heard Kai laughing, and I looked up to find him laughing at my cutting. This made me extremely upset, as I've been working almost day and night while he only works 7 to 9 hours. This along with his mom recently coming into the shop and laughing along with him. This got to me, and I walked over to Kai and said a few words to him that I shouldn't have. He immediately got defensive and pushed me back, and I was about to strike back when his mom instantly joined in with him and intentionally pushed me to the left where the saw was. Stupidly, I left it on. As soon as I was pushed back, the back of my hand was shoved right into the saw, causing a drizzle of blood to just gush everywhere, and for my palm to be basically split in half with a huge gap between my pinky and ring finger. The shock kicked in, and I instantly grabbed my hand and shouted for my mom, who was on the other side of the shop. She immediately got an ambulance, and I was sent to the closest hospital. Kai has been texting me almost every day, apologizing for his mother. The only text from her was her saying that this was my fault and to not hurt her son. Update. I think I need to clear some things up. First, I'm 17 years old. I'm allowed to work here because my brother-in-law owns it, along with his father. I'm trusted. Second, how did I manage to keep the saw on? I'm not sure myself. Extremely critical mess-up on my part. Third, to those saying my hand would have been split in half, yes, it is basically split in half. It stopped at a gap in between, and thankfully by a miracle wasn't completely cut in half, but was itching off the edge from a clean cut down the middle. I got in contact with the mother's husband and told him about the full situation and that she was intentionally trying to harm me. Apparently she had been telling her husband a completely different story. He seemed mad and said he'd talk to her. I don't entirely know what to do with this story, to be honest. Some of the language used here makes it sound like the original poster low-key started this altercation. I also don't know how you can state beyond a doubt that the mother meant to push him into the table saw. I think the big takeaway that literally every person in this story needs to learn is don't have physical altercations next to active table saws. In which case, my big question for both OP and Kylan is how the heck they've kept this job for any amount of time without knowing this. It's just hard to see a lot of winners here. No mother who pushes a minor is in the right, but the OP basically admits, albeit indirectly, that she was defending her son from his attack. It also sounds like these two teenagers have the full run of the shop. If there's no manager around to stand between their arguments, then whoever's running this operation is a liability. In the comments, OP says he won't press charges because it's too late. But I wonder if he's just aware that his brother-in-law would be in serious trouble if they learned how hands-off he's apparently been about letting kids work around dangerous equipment. I'm also wondering if there are necessary certifications here that haven't been attained. Viewers, do your thing. Let us know in the comments if this work situation sounds sketchy to you. It sounds sketchy to me, but I've been wrong before. My boyfriend's dog called me ugly, and I have some questions about that. I'll preface this by saying that I've been seeing Michael for a while now. He's a really funny guy, and we pretty much get along well. A bit too sarcastic, though. We've been dating for 4 months. Michael likes the food I cook, and he wanted me to come to his house to cook him dinner and also meet his dog for the first time. I'd only seen the dog in pictures and videos because Michael's overprotective of him. I grabbed all I needed from the store and went over to his house. All went well, I met his dog, then we sat down to talk. Suddenly, his dog started moving in a funny way. Michael was laughing while looking at me. I felt confused. I asked him what the dog was doing, and Michael said that the dog was telling him about me. I was like, okay. And then he flat out said that the dog thought I was ugly. This shocked me completely. I looked at Michael and asked if he was serious. He started explaining that his dog is like that with some people, and that I shouldn't get offended over an animal's behavior. I felt horrible, because I, as a person, always struggled with self-esteem, and am no stranger to the word ugly. My issue wasn't with the dog, but with what Michael said. It's like he was indirectly giving his opinion about my looks and using his dog as an excuse. Long story short, we had an argument, and I ended up canceling dinner and going home. Michael called several times. Then when I picked up, he was lashing out the entire time, saying that I overreacted and that I cannot blame him and punish him for something his dog did. He advised me to get rid of the toxic sensitivity I have and deal with whatever insecurity I have as soon as possible, because what happens will set the tone for our relationship and eventually our marriage later. I did respond later, which caused another argument. My sister said I messed things up with my stupidity, and that I should have laughed it off, but for some reason I wasn't able to. Did I overreact here? Let's go back to the part where you've been together less than half a year. Why is Michael already talking about what's going to set the tone for your marriage? That's kind of crazy, especially if he thinks you're ugly, and a lot of commenters seem to think he does because it's crazy to think that he and his dog actually have that sort of translation figured out. It definitely feels like Michael might be projecting his own thoughts onto the dog here, which is messed up beyond belief. Granted, it's also possible he has a really terrible sense of humor, in which case it still falls on OP to decide whether that's something she wants to be attached to for however long the relationship might survive. It's not an easy decision. What would you decide if you were in her shoes? Should she give him another chance, or get out now before things get uglier? Let us know your thoughts down below. If you made it this far in the video, consider liking and subscribing for more videos coming. I think my college-age daughter is doing you-know-what instead of studying. My daughter is going to enter her 3rd year of college. I've decided not to pay her tuition because I don't think she's taking her studies seriously. She spends much of her free time dancing with her friends at nightclubs or hanging out at the beach. She has a boyfriend who's conventionally attractive and very physically fit, and I think they may be doing you-know-what. This is coming at the expense of her studies, as she only has a 3.3. Her brother graduated at the top of his class from a much better university. He always went to bed at 9 p.m. and got his work done on time, and now is doing a PhD at MIT. I've tried to encourage her to be more like him, but she says that she enjoys having fun with her friends. When I told her that her boyfriend probably wasn't a good partner, she got quite offended. Even now, during her summer break, she's spending time suntanning with her friends or going on dates with her boyfriend. I decided that I won't pay her tuition for the upcoming semester until she decides to take her studies seriously. She's been devastated and has decided to stay with her boyfriend's family. I tried asking her brother to talk some sense into her, but he said that I shouldn't have suspended her tuition. He said that she's going to have to make her own decisions. My husband, her father, thinks that it's better for her to be in college, even if she's a mediocre student. For this reason, I think I may be the jerk. It's weird that the way she spends her time during break is coming up in this at all. Of course she's tanning and spending time with her boyfriend. She doesn't have school. That's perfectly acceptable. The really crazy part of this whole thing is just when it's posted. It gives the daughter no time to make a decision because the semester's already starting. It's also insane that such a huge decision was made without consulting the other parent. He's not out of the picture, they're still married to each other. So why does he not get a say in what happens to his own daughter's college tuition? Basically, it sounds like this mother made a pretty reckless decision that literally everyone involved warned her against. And that didn't stop her. So she's definitely right to think she's the jerk here. If the daughter's GPA had dropped significantly, I might understand. But it's still above a 3, which really isn't that bad. It doesn't even stop her from following in her brother's footsteps if she wants to. Also, this mother is 50. I won't follow all the commenters assuming that the daughter really is doing you-know-what, because there's no proof of that, and plenty of people in their 20s hold off. But the fact that this 50-year-old woman can't even say it directly is ridiculous. It's a 3-letter word. I'm not saying it because YouTube is unforgiving, but she has no excuse. My nervous colleague doesn't want me training him anymore. This happened a little while ago, and whilst I was confident that I behaved appropriately, my colleague still seems to think that I was in the wrong. The company I work for hired a new employee, and I was tasked with the responsibility of training him. This colleague, let's call him Nigel, because that's his name, so it makes sense. Now, to be clear, I've gone out of my way from day one to ensure that Nigel was made to feel welcome. I do not shirk my responsibilities. For starters, I gave Nigel the best workstation on our floor, which is located by the window that gives the most direct sunlight. I've even made it my business to keep closing the window every time I see it open so he gets no draft. During a meeting, I tasked Nigel with bringing in the drinks, and I couldn't help but notice that a couple of the drinks had spilt onto the tray. I had also tasked Nigel with delivering a short presentation, and did notice that he stuttered a few times. Please bear in mind that there were only 35 people in the meeting. I asked Nigel if there was anything he needed from me to aid with his training, and he said no. I started to get concerned that Nigel was nervous, and whilst I understand that nerves are completely normal when starting a new job, I did some research into signs of nervousness so I could help him settle in. Some of the signs that I noticed Nigel exhibit include slight rocking in his chair, leaning against walls, cracking his knuckles, sweating at his desk profusely, and stuttering. I also noticed over time that Nigel was avoiding eye contact with me. I purchased a small CD player and started to play relaxing music near Nigel's workstation. I bought special grips for the pen Nigel uses, as I did notice he dropped his pen. I made sure to make Nigel a chamomile tea every time I made myself a drink. When my boss inquired as to how Nigel was getting on, I explained that he needed more time and more support. When Nigel found out his training was being extended, he asked me why, as he felt he was doing fine. Nigel shared with me that he has never had training like the training I had provided, but he would continue. To be clear, Nigel's job was not on the line, and he knew that. I did plan on having a sit down with him to find out specifically how I could support him further. However, I guess he requested someone new to take on his training. Was I the jerk? I don't know if I'd call this OP a jerk, but the behavior is definitely weird at the very least. First of all, if Nigel's window is open every time you walk by, it's probably because he's been opening it. So closing it actually does come across as a jerk move, even if it wasn't meant that way. Also, if his desk gets the most direct sunlight and he's not allowed to keep his window open, then I think I might have a guess as to why he keeps sweating. And he can't cool down because you keep bringing him hot tea. By the way, if you follow this channel, just know that this OP was the same one who wanted to take partial custody of his neighbor's hamster. So either he's one of the most unique comedy writers of our generation, or he's got some real blind spots when it comes to dealing with other people. I'll let you decide which side of the debate you land on. My wife doesn't like that I support my cheating best friend. My friend and his wife have been married for 3 years and have 2 small babies. Recently, another woman reached out to his wife to tell her that a few years back, while they were living in separate states when he was in the military, they slept together. This has caused a great deal of havoc to their marriage, and things have been super tense. However, the wife has been extremely toxic lately, and although I understand she's hurt, she's taking advantage of the situation to get her way on everything. Most recently, she basically guilt-tripped my friend into buying an expensive cat, because in her words, she deserves it. They already have 5 other cats and 2 small babies, and not a lot of economic resources to add another expensive cat into the mix. My buddy agreed as a way to keep the peace. He's trying to save his marriage, but at what cost? She's doing whatever she wants, leaving him the kids to go out late, making him do extra work around the house, even though he works a very physical job, and now the whole cat situation. I told my wife the situation and how I think she's being unreasonable, but my wife says that this wife is probably very hurt and isn't dealing well with all the emotions that come from finding out he cheated. As I said, I can empathize, but this is no excuse to treat my friend like dirt. There's a healthy and unhealthy way to deal with the situation, and she's choosing the unhealthy way to go about it and causing more damage. My wife is now mad at me. She said she'll take the wife's side on everything and support her in whatever she needs. He's the one that messed up after all, and he needs to deal with the consequences of his actions. She says he should give her whatever she wants. But where do you even draw the line? When will he stop paying for a mistake from years ago? This has now created a rift between me and my wife, but I don't think I'm being the jerk here for taking my friend's side. Look, I know what he did was awful, but two wrongs don't make a right, and she's just being spiteful and selfish, getting her way in everything she wants and guilting him into big decisions that will only hurt their family even more. Okay, it's true that people can learn from their mistakes, but this cheating supposedly happened years ago, and he never came clean. So what reason does the wife have to assume he learned anything? We can't treat this like it happened years ago. For her, it's happening right now. That's the important part this OP doesn't seem to understand. If his friend really wants to make things better, he needs to find a way to make his wife trust him again. And right now, the only thing that will accomplish this is time. Nothing else is good enough. Maybe things won't work out. That's very possible. But maybe they will. Either way, it won't happen overnight. This OP is right that demanding a new cat isn't the best way to go about it, but I'm sure the wife also doesn't really know the best way to go about it. She's hurt and lashing out, and she gets to do that for a little while. If it goes on too long, gets too indulgent, then it just means you had two toxic people in a relationship together. But right now, it means she's hurt, and she's kind of owed that. But what do you think? The comments on this post were pretty mixed. Do you think the wife is overdoing it, or is there even such a thing when you're cheated on? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.